Have you ever just assumed a realtor would put the right clauses and conditions in your offer if or when you were going to buy a house or a condo? What even is the difference between clauses, terms, and conditions? And is it even important for you to know? Hi, I'm Michael Shuster, Forest Hill Real Estate. When you make an offer to buy a house or condo, your offer to purchase is a legal contract and legally binding in many different ways. So yes, it is important for you to know the distinction. Although people use the words clauses, terms, and conditions interchangeably, some of these protect you and some can make you liable for costs. Some can make it easy for you to get out of a deal if you want to, while others can make your life very complicated in the future. So here are the key differences between clauses, conditions, and terms. Clauses. Clauses are stipulated and requirements that a buyer or a seller must agree to as part of the overall transaction. Depending on the clause and or the wording, it might be something that a seller, for example, might have to do or undertake to do prior to the closing date of the sale and purchase, or something that is relevant to the closing date of the sale and purchase, or even something that what they call survives the closing date of the sale and purchase, which means it's in effect after the closing date. An example might be the seller agrees to provide the property with the exterior and the interior of the property in a clean and a trash-free and broom-swept condition. That's an example of a clause. So in that example, if the buyer gets the keys and finds unwanted old broken sofas and furniture in the living room, or huge industrial bags of garbage, then the buyer might have grounds to sue the other party or the seller. Another example might be the seller represents and warrants that the fixtures and the chattels and the furniture and appliances or anything included in the agreement will be in good working order and free from any liens upon completion. So if a buyer gets the keys and finds that the washer and the dryer or the stove are non-functional, they might have recourse instead of having to go out and pay thousands of dollars to buy replacements. So those are clauses. Now let's talk about conditions. Conditions can be another component to a purchase and sale agreement. The reason they're called conditions is that the purchase and sale agreement is not final until those conditions are met by the required party, the buyer or the seller. Conditions have to have a specified date or timeline in which the details of that condition have to be met. What the specific date or timeline is reached, or when rather the specific date or timeline is reached, there's a mandatory subsequent step that must take place. The buyer or the seller, whomever put that condition into the purchase and sale agreement, has to either, one, sign a notice of fulfillment that the condition has been fulfilled, or two, sign a waiver, which means they're effectively removing that condition out of the purchase and sale agreement, so it's no longer conditional. The agreement is no longer conditional on that condition. Or, number three, they have to sign a mutual release, which basically releases both buyer and seller from the purchase and sale agreement, and the agreement becomes null and void. The most popular examples of conditions are those that we usually hear about for buyers, such as conditional upon buyer getting financing or a mortgage, or conditional on an inspection of the property by a home inspector. A seller's condition could be conditional on seller's lawyer review, for example. So if there is a condition on financing and inspection, for example, for 5 days, let's say, that means the seller has agreed to accept the buyer's offer and can't accept any other offers in those 5 days. They do have a binding purchase and sale agreement, however, it's not final until one of those previous three conditions or those three criteria that I mentioned are met. So if the buyer does not get financing approval or is not satisfied with the home inspection in those 5 days, whatever that condition provides for, then the buyer, in this example, can get out of the deal without penalty. So if the buyer, in this example, submits a notice of fulfillment or a waiver at any time within those 5 days, for example, or whatever the conditional period is, then the purchase and sale agreement is then final and fully binding. If the buyer in this example submits a mutual release and the seller signs it, then they agree to let each other out of the deal, and the seller can now accept other offers and sell to someone else. And finally, number three, terms. There are terms to a purchase and sale agreement, or any agreement for that matter. Terms can be other important details which form part of the agreement and are usually criteria that can be negotiated and have to be agreed upon. So examples of terms are the actual date that the transaction will close, or the amount of the deposit. And by the way, if you want to know the difference between a deposit and a down payment, be sure to check out my post in my video called Deposit versus Down Payment, as there's a very important distinction between them. If you want to know more about the process of buying or selling a home, or how to do it safely and smoothly, I'm always happy to chat. And remember, when it comes to real estate or anything else in life, if there was a better way, wouldn't you at least want to know about it? Just email me with any real estate questions that you might have, mike@TheREguy.ca. It's always confidential, never pressure, never any obligation. I just love to talk real estate and I love to help. Thanks for watching.